What's up, man? How y'all doing? Back to the emotional prisoner. Emotional prisoner. Trapped behind the bars of my thoughts by Jose Villegas III. Chapter 4. Self-investigation. We're going to get right into it. I think I might read a little bit and then I'll probably stop and chop game about some of what we read rather than just, sitting here reading to y'all. But in any event, man, I appreciate y'all for tuning in, taking a moment of y'all time to play a part and participate in self-therapy. This is a free online therapeutic channel, and it's for us, by us, because can't nobody help us but us. The name of the channel is called Uncomfortable Conversations. I'm the sacrificial lamb for the uncomfortable conversations. I sacrifice my time. I sacrifice my comfort in attempts of sitting here dialoguing and presenting information that'll help me and allow y'all to see and share the moments of me helping myself in hopes of it inspiring you to help yourself. And we all help one another. So, with that being said, man, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. And hit the like button if you would. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Give some input if you can. Because I don't have all the answers. I don't have all of the solutions to my own problems. I most definitely don't have the solutions to your problems. I'm just working on myself in real time and allowing y'all to see it. And in hopes of us working together to become better. But chapter 4 is called self-investigation. Self-investigation is a belief system inventory to see what beliefs we have on the shelf of our mind so that we can stop living a bankrupt life. Stop living a bankrupt life, an empty life, a life that's not producing any fruitfulness. That's what a bankrupt life is. Most of us filed spiritual bankruptcy when we gave up on ourselves by settling for less and allowing the opinion of others to become our reality. The word inventory means to take a look at or an account of something that's on the shelf to see what's good or not. It's a fact-finding opportunity. The difference between the inventory a business takes and the one we take on ourselves is that the business can just throw out what's old and replace it with something new. We must work what's old out of our mind by feeding it something new. We must work what's old out of our mind by feeding it something new. That's why I coined the term information equals destination. We must work what's old out of our mind by feeding it something new. That's the concept of being born again. From the Bible. That's the concept of being born again. Replacing your mind with new information. Feeding your mind positive thoughts, positive words, words of life, words of prosperity, words of hope, opposed to the opposite. Just renewing your mind, the way you renew your mind, because if you renew your mind, you renew your character. If you renew your character is renewed by your actions. Your actions are controlled by the information that you impregnate your mind with, which is why I say that information equals destination. The word self, as used in the context above, means that, it means the me that you don't see. The word self, as used in the context above, means the me that you don't see. The one that cries on the inside but smiles on the outside, as if everything is all right. Self is the person that we look at in the mirror and then we cover up when we come into the presence of other people. Self is that part of us that we see and know that's there. Sometimes we glad that it's there and sometimes we shame that it's there. Depending on how you see self is going to dictate how you present self. But anyway, there are beliefs that worked as a child, but as an adult, they've become a ceiling to my spiritual growth. Belief that worked when we was a child, but as an adult, it became a stumbling block to our spiritual growth. What are some of those beliefs? What are some beliefs that we had as a child, but we really need to get rid of as an adult? Because a lot of times, if you 30, 40 years old and have the same value system that you had at 14, 15, 16, your check engine light on and you just ignoring it. So we have to be able to be honest with ourselves when we take an inventory of ourselves and acknowledge what's working and what's not working. Once we acknowledge and identify that, we have to be strong enough to do the work that it takes to create the conditions or the state, the present time that we desire. Because where we exist tomorrow is predicated off of what we doing today. In any event, let me read on. The investigation is a digging into our past so that we might have a future. It's not a search for blame, but of understanding of others so that we might understand ourselves. Imagine that. The investigation is a digging into our past so that we might have a future. You dig into your past to create a future for yourself. Your tomorrow is predicated off of your yesterday. Today becomes your yesterday as you move forward. Our present becomes our past as we journey into our future. The investigation is a digging into our past so that we might have a future. It's not a search for blame, but of understanding of others so that we might understand ourselves. The others are everyone who have interacted in our lives, from our mother, father, siblings, friends, and neighbors, to the teacher, pastor, and the prostitute. Why must we look at every relationship? Because that's how we developed our belief system. Every person in a law unto him or herself, because we set the rules for our lives by what we believe. God can't free you from the jail of your mind if you're not willing to do the mental and emotional work necessary to be liberated. I think a life that has not been investigated is not worth living. It's not worth living because it's not your life, but a reflection of all of the relationships you've had thus far. This is the reason for the self-investigation. But what does that mean, man? What does that mean to y'all when you hear that? When you hear that, if you're not willing to do the mental and emotional work necessary to be liberated, I think a life that has not been investigated is not worth living. It's not worth living because it's not your life, but a reflection of all of the relationships you've had thus far. Do y'all agree with that? Yeah, let's have a conversation about that. Let me repeat that again. I might go live so we can talk about that. I'm going to start from the beginning so we can follow along. Every person is a law unto him or herself because we set the rules for our lives by what we believe. We set the rules for our lives by what we believe. And most of the time, where do our belief system come from? Do it come from self-inspection? Do it come from self-interpretation? Do it come from information from self, or do it come from information from other people? Or is it other people's information that's just been imprinted in our mind and we just adopt it as if it's our own thoughts? Where the things that you think about life and everything that you know, how do you know it? Where did you acquire your understanding from? Is it something you put time into, or is it something somebody else passed on to you? It's worth knowing, because we need to know if we operating based off of what we believe, or what somebody has manipulated us into believing, or what somebody has influenced us, or just traditionally passed on to us to believe, because most of us are traditional believers. We don't put any time into trying to understand and figure out what we really believe. We just believe what we've been taught to believe. We believe a lot of things that our great-grandparents believed, because the belief system has just been passed on. But in any event, God can't free you from the jail of your mind if you're not willing to do the mental and emotional work necessary to be liberated. I think a life that has not been investigated is not worth living. That's what I want to talk about. A life that has not been investigated is not worth living. What do that mean? Do we agree with that? It's not worth living because it's not your life, but a reflection of all of the relationships you've had thus far. This is the reason for the self-investigation, to help us uncover, to discover, so that we can recover from the pain in our past that lives in our present through our minds, snuffling out all hopes for a future. Life is happening right now. There's no tomorrow, because when tomorrow comes, it will be right now again. Damn. Life is happening right now. There is no tomorrow, because when tomorrow comes, it will be right now again. The emotional prisoner sacrifices right now by mentally living in yesterday. The emotional prisoner sacrifices right now by living in yesterday. That's a hell of a statement, and it's convicting, because so many of us sacrifice our right now because we remembering what was opposed to what is. That's a hell of a statement. So many of us sacrifice our right now because we live in yesterday, or waiting for tomorrow, hoping that it will bring something new, but failing to realize that in order to get something new out of life, we must become someone new. In order to get something new out of life, we must become someone new. And how do you become someone new? How do you go from who you was to who you desire to be? It's only one way you can recreate yourself. That's by reprocessing the information that goes into your mind, because the information that you take in dictates the character that comes out. Information equals destination. That's how you become a new person. You have to do a personal inventory and understand the things that you have internal. Not you, but we. We have to take an inventory, identify the things that we have internalized that has been counterproductive to who we want to be. And a lot of times the things that we internalized were productive to who we desired to be at that time. But the person who I desired to be at 14, 15, 16 years old ain't the person who I desire to be at damn near 50 now. And if that's your reality, then, you know what I'm saying, we right here together along this, following the process of evolution. We trying to evolve we try to evolve from who we was to who we want to be. And the way that you evolve and recreate yourself is by first taking on some new information that's going to allow you to become a different person, because you can only operate in accordance with your thoughts. I'm going to continue reading. I wrote my biography and found out that the only thing that changed about me was my shoe size. I was a grown kid. I physically grew up, but mentally and emotionally I stayed in a childish state. The autobiography was simply a garbage run to find out what stinks in my life. The real work is putting out the trash. We were all created to bring something to this world and leave it here before we leave, which is called a purpose. But you can't get to your purpose until you deal with your pain. Our purpose has always been in us, but we've piled so much pain and bad information on top of it until it can't get out. This is the main purpose of the investigation of self, to remove and get rid of the obstacles that block our awareness from seeing the true meaning of our life. It's important to understand that it's going to hurt, but this is necessary pain. There's a story of a guy who lost his keys in his house but decided to look for them outside. His friend came by and asked, "What are you looking for?" And he said, "My keys." The friend said, "Where did you lose them?" And he said, "Inside the house." His friend replied, "If you lost them inside the house, why are you looking for them out here?" His response was, "Because there's more light out here." The moral of this story is that the keys to the prison of your mind will not be found in the light of the world, but in the darkness of your soul. I'm going to repeat that. The moral of this story is that the keys to the prison of your mind will not be found in the light of the world, but in the darkness of your soul. As long as we keep looking into the mirror of the world to see ourselves, we will only get back distorted images of who they think we should be. It's not until we look within will we find the true answers for our lives. So let's get ready to take a ride with your eyes into the life of an emotional prisoner and see if you can find something out about yourself from my story. I'm not trying to impress, depress, or suppress, but just express myself. I will expose things about myself that may make you feel uncomfortable. So don't mentally shut down, but read on. So get ready. Here we go. I was raised in a family that did not know how to be a family, like many of us. We was raised in a family that didn't know how to be a family. So I was screwed up before I grew up. And when I left home, I connected with other screw-ups, just like me, so it was easy to self-destruct. The era that I was born in was one where providing for one's needs was to be understood as love, which is not the same thing. To a child, love is spelled T-I-M-E. Because if we don't spend time with our children, they will internalize that as we don't love them. Believe it or not, we as adults spell love the same way too. T-I-M-E. Yeah, there's a difference between providing for and raising a child. Providing means to pay bills, and raising means to grow the mind to become mentally and emotionally able to handle life. I think parenting is the most important job on the face of the earth, because it's where the seeds, which are our kids, either blossom or become weeds. The tragedy is that it's on the job training. And if we who are parents don't learn, how will our kids know when they become parents? This is how the vicious cycle continues, until a guy like me comes along and takes a risk by exposing his childhood so that others might see the emotional setups that set them back. Because of the situation I was born into, with no dad and my mother having to make decisions to stay home and raise us or go to work and feed us, which wasn't a hard decision, I ended up being provided for and not raised. Life doesn't give any breaks for not growing. Life doesn't give any breaks for not growing mentally and emotionally. But that's a lot of us, especially a lot of us that come from impoverished conditions, single parents, he say, because of the situation I was born into with no dad and my mother having to make a decision to stay home and raise us or go to work and feed us, which wasn't a hard decision, I ended up being provided for and not raised. A lot of us has been provided for and not raised because our parents was in survival mode. They didn't have time to nurture and cultivate our minds because they was too busy trying to sacrifice their time to provide for our bodies. And a lot of times that's a lot of our current conditions, because it was a condition that we internalized because that's how we were socialized. We sacrifice our time to try to provide for our kids, thinking that we raising them, but if you're not contributing to the development of their mental and emotional and spiritual, you're not raising them. We not raising them. We just providing for them. Slippery slope, man. When you got time, you ain't got money. When you got money, you ain't got time. It's hard trying to find a balance to it. Life doesn't care about you like it doesn't care about me. It has its own agenda and no one can interrupt or change it. I'm what they call a scratch baby. Everything I've done in my life, I had to start from scratch. My mother was in the hole, so that made me in the hole. When I was born, the doctor slapped me and I got up and went to work. That's just to let you know how long I've been working. My siblings and I spent a lot of time home alone. We were what they call latchkey kids. There was always someone there to beat me, but no one there to teach me. The beatings were a way to instill fear to do what's right while they were gone, which was often what happened. As a result of the beatings was that I learned to respond to fear and not love. If you told me you loved me, it felt very uncomfortable until it made me look for a way to escape. People who told me they loved me, I took advantage of them. And people who abused me, I bowed down to them. If you instilled fear in me, I would probably do what you needed done before you asked. Growing up, I can't remember being told I was loved or special. There wasn't much hugging going on in my house. The first time I started receiving hugs regularly was when I became an alcoholic and had to attend AA meetings. And in the beginning, it felt funny. Hugs are very important because they connect our spirits. It's food for the soul. Hugs transfer energy. That's why he say it connects our soul. When you hug somebody, y'all transferring energies back and forth. Life for me as a young boy was very difficult because I was shy, afraid, and a very emotional child who would cry if you hollered at him. You didn't have to hit me, just holler. And because I was teased and slapped upside my head and told to stop the whining, I learned to suppress how I felt early in life. To avoid the teasing and being slapped upside my head, I stopped crying on the outside but kept crying on the inside. So I never stopped crying. I believed that if I could have cried a little more on the outside, I would have drunk and done drugs a little less. Crying is an emotional outlet. But because I wasn't allowed to wash my face with tears to cleanse my soul of pain, I ended up self-destructing in an attempt to release my pain. Just like he said, crying is an emotional outlet, so is smiling, so is frowning. It's just an outward expression of an inward feeling. But we put a lot of opinion into the expression of tears. And we overlook a smile or a frown because we have accepted that as the norm. But when we see somebody crying, we have kind of accepted that, or we perceive that as being abnormal. But crying is just an outward expression of an inward feeling. Most of the time, we don't cry enough. Let me see how much more I got to go. I've been going, about 20, 25 minutes? Yeah, I'm probably going to cut this one in half. I got to get going. Yeah, I think I'm gonna read this page here and then I'll stop. We'll finish this some other time. Suppressing my emotions created a problem of not knowing how to identify what I felt or how to deal with the negative energy, which led me to turn to anger as a way of expressing myself. Anger is never the problem, hurting is. And because I didn't know how to express hurt, anger was the next best thing. Anger and danger is one letter apart. Remove the D and you have anger. Reincorporate the D and you have danger. Anger creates danger. I might grow up and, I didn't know how to express hurt. Anger was the next best thing. Some thought that I might grow up and be gay, so they set out to change that by punching me in the chest in an attempt to make me hard. They didn't make me hard, but disconnected me from my emotional self. And in essence, how not to feel or to become emotionally numb. No. And in essence, how not to feel or to be emotionally numb. I would have rather been gay and free than to be straight and stuck. We do two things with our emotions. We either express them or suppress them. So I became a suppressor. Suppression was the norm in my house and neighborhood because expression was taken as talking back, and the wrath would come on you like a thief in the night. Kids were seen and not heard. You had no opinion about anything. With all the suppression in my young life, I became like a keg of dynamite in a hot room, and all I needed was a spark to set me off. One thing about suppression is that you can't keep stuffing your insides with pain like a Thanksgiving turkey and not get mentally and emotionally sick. For me, the pain showed up as wet in the bed, which was a sign that something was going wrong in me. No one knew anything about the mental and emotional aspects of life, so they tried to solve a spiritual problem with a physical remedy. The physical remedy was to beat me in hopes I would stop wetting the bed. If beatings worked, I should be an angel. You can't fix the inside from the outside unless you are working on the insides from the outside. To only use fear, pain and abuse will only create more problems. My solution to avoid getting beat was to change the sheets before anyone knew. So I got good at avoiding the punishment but never solving the problems. Wash day was early every Saturday morning, and I would volunteer to wash the clothes by myself to cover my butt, and the neighbors thought I was being a good son. Outside of the home, the kids teased me about my name, which is Jose. They called me Ho for short, and I didn't like that, but I also didn't like to fight. So I swallowed the pain and took the abuse. The hoe they were referring to was the one we call women who get paid for sex. My name caused me a lot of mental and emotional problems, and one in particular was self-hatred. Some of the meanest people in the world are other kids because they will make you not like yourself. The teasing and name calling are perpetrated when we don't have any positive reinforcement at home, and the only information we're getting about ourselves is coming from other kids. Remember, I said earlier that my dad wasn't around and neither was my mother because she had to work all the time. So who would I turn to in a time of need? No one. My defensive mechanism to survive the teasing and name calling was to become a people pleaser because I believed that if I made you my friend, you wouldn't tease or hurt me anymore. That worked for a while, and then others started to perceive me as being weak, and when weakness is perceived as your dominating quality, get ready to be abused. School was traumatic for me because there was no one guy who abused me through elementary and junior high. School was traumatic for me because there was this one guy who abused me through elementary and junior high. He took my money and lunch whenever he felt like it. The result of the abuse was that not only was I afraid of him, but I became afraid of people in general. I would see him coming down the hallway at school and would slip into the bathroom until he passed. As you can see, I always find ways to avoid confronting and dealing with my problems. Even today, it's hard at times to speak up and stand for what I believe in, but it's gotten better with practice. Man, I'm gonna stop right there. I got to get going. But a lot of us can hear these readings and relate to it, because what I done learned is we have more in common than we have in different. The problem is most of us are too shameful to talk about the things that we have really been through and suffered from, as well as continue to suffer from. So that's why this is one of my favorite readings. This book, Emotional Prisoner, and the book Men from Mars, Women from Venus by John Gray. I look at that book as a relationship Bible, and we're going to get into that too. But I'm going to just leave it right there for right now, man. But I appreciate y'all for giving me 30 minutes of y'all time, and hopefully I've given y'all 30 minutes worth of time y'all sacrifice. I appreciate y'all for, riding the roller coaster with me, man, because it's life. Trying to be consistent at providing content, meaningful content, and get better as I go. I'm blind man shuffling with it. But in any event, I'm going to keep pressing and I'm going to keep evolving. I'm going to keep getting better in hopes of helping us all get better. Stay tuned for the game-related episodes, man. It should be interesting. It should be informative. It should be thought-provoking. And it should be something that you can grow accustomed to and make it a part of your weekly life. Because we're going to bring the heat, man. It's a collaboration of me, Charleston, and Dewberry, doing what we do. With that being said, man, remember, your information establishes your destination. Peace out.